Hi everyone, it's Misty. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm back again this week to share the project I made for this week's Simon Says Stamp Wednesday challenge. The theme is masculine and we are showcasing products from Tim Holtz. And since Father's Day is right around the corner, I decided to make a card for one of my dads. I thought this rubber stamp by Tim Holtz was perfect for my biological dad, who's a commercial fisherman, and this wave stencil was just perfect for the whole theme I had going on. Now, I say two dads because I also have a stepdad who's been in my life since I was in elementary school, and he's not just my stepdad, he's just my other dad. And he's a fire chief, so I got a commercial fisherman and I got a fire chief for my two dads, which I think is pretty cool. But so this is for my dad, and now I need to catch up really quick. I'm using the Deco foil transfer gel on my stencil here because I'm going to be using some foil. And I used the pixie spray for the first time on the back of my stencil, which I didn't include in this video. I took it outside to spray it on the back, but that stuff is, I will never do another stencil without it. It's really awesome, especially for stencils that are rather thin. I just used to stay away from them because they always shifted on me, and I'm excited to be able to use those stencils again. And I'm using this really cool tool. It's just a scraper. I think it's called a Stencil Pal, but it's really nice when using foils because it makes sure you get a nice even coverage on your stencil, and that way hopefully you won't have any weird bumps when you put your foil over the top of it. So that's the scraper is new to me, the transfer gel is new to me, and the pixie spray is new to me. So this was a day of new experiences, and I had to say I love every single one of the products I tried today. And I'm just using a piece of laminated cardstock behind it because I figured it'd be really easy cleanup. So since I had my Mink machine out here, I decided to use a couple other stencils, and obviously the rainbow isn't masculine, but since I had it out, I wanted to try some other backgrounds. And I love that rainbow paper, so I had to leave this part in here just to show you how cool it looks. But look how awesome this looks. I thought this was perfect. It turned out really, really well. And I think with using that scraper, it was just such a nice, smooth coverage. And there were a couple areas that that the foil was where I didn't want it to be, so I just took my tweezers and just scraped it and it came right off. It wasn't actually stuck to the paper, it was just kind of hanging there. So it was really easy to remove it. And there were a couple spots that the foil didn't stick to, but that's okay because it's going to be a background. But look how cool this one looks. I can't wait to use this for a background. Love this rainbow foil, and I love this stencil by Simon Says Stamp. It's so pretty. I don't know how I'm going to cut this down. And then I also did a silver one up there at the top. It was a Tim Holtz stencil. All right, so I'm going to heat emboss this Captain's Sketch stamp. And I'm just doing it on some scrap paper right now, but I'm going to do the same process for my final piece. But instead of including both, I'll just show you what I did here. So I'm just stamping it with embossing ink and then covering it with some black embossing powder. I just still wasn't sure where I was going with this yet, so I stamped one out. I was trying some different dies, trying to cut the Captain Sketch out. I don't know. I tried a circle die, which looked kind of funky because even though the ship's wheel is a circle, the whole stamp isn't. And I'm actually really happy with this die that you see here on screen. I thought it was perfect for this. It wasn't an exact rectangle, which still looked kind of funky too, but so I was just trying a couple different things, I guess is my point. Now this is my final piece here, and this is on the Tim Holtz distress paper. And I'm just going to watercolor with some distress inks. I have Vintage Photo and Gathered Twigs. I did the Vintage Photo first, and then I figured I'd go in with the Gathered Twigs just to darken up some areas. And I don't know why I left the die there. I mean, my thought was, because I was going to be coloring the background too, my thought was to leave it there just so I didn't want the whole area around the ship's wheel to be colored. I wanted you to be able to see some white areas too. but I'm not even coloring that part yet. And then when I do color that part, I remove the dye. So I have no idea why I left my dye there, but I did. And then in between each layer, I think I went over it twice with a vintage photo, some areas. I'm letting it dry naturally in between each layer. And I was really engrossed in a show I was watching on Netflix. I have my iPad in front of me, so it worked out good just to sit there and let it dry. I was watching it's called When They See Us. Oh my goodness, the sad part is it's a true story about the Central Park 5 boys that were put away for a crime they didn't commit. It's just a really good show, and it was heartbreaking to know that it's a true story, but I was really engrossed in it. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. I mean, these boys were only 14 years old, and they went to prison for 12 years before somebody else finally confessed to the crime. And I mean, the cops coerced their statements, and I just cannot believe that really happened. But anyway, I highly recommend that show if you haven't watched it. So now I'm going to go around the background with some weathered wood. I love this color. It's like a grayish blue. Oh, you can see it there, but it's really pretty. So I'm going around it with some water first. What I love about watercolor is the color is only going to go where you place the water, so it won't go outside of that area. And with that wheel there that I just colored, I mean, I was pretty sure it was dry, but I just didn't want any colors to bleed, so I laid the water down first. What I really wanted, but forgot all about, is I wanted kind of a layered look for the background. Didn't quite turn out that way, but see, I'm going to go ahead and add another layer of color, but I didn't wait in between each layer for it to dry, so it doesn't really have that layered effect that I was hoping for, but that's okay. I'm still happy with it. Sometimes I get these ideas in my head as I'm going, and then 5 minutes later I forget about it, and I don't think about it until I'm watching this video back, and I'm like, oh yeah, I wanted to make that kind of layered looking. But so here I'm just adding another layer, but I didn't wait for it to dry, so it's all just going to kind of blend together. But look how cool that would have looked if it would have had kind of layers to it. And I wasn't sure if I was going to go over that captain's helm statement there, but in the end I did. I thought it would look funky if I left it white. But I left some white areas in it though. Because like I said, I didn't want the whole thing to be covered. I kind of wanted, some areas, see how it's white around the edges. I wanted it to kind of look like just an organic watercolor. And here's where I've decided I'm not really liking my foiled background. I don't know, I just didn't like it together. But I'm gonna keep trying. So I thought I would go around the edges with the weathered wood. Thought maybe that would help. I always forget about this technique too, and then when I remember, it's like, oh yeah, it looks really cool when you do that. But I think after this, it's like, all right, well, I need to go in a different direction because I just wasn't feeling the background. So then I'm going to pull out some soft navy cardstock by Simon Says Stamp. And I really liked this with that color cardstock. It seems like they went really well together. That weathered wood was a perfect color to go with the soft navy. So I'm going to cut my background piece down to A2 size. And I'm going to use that instead of my wavy background. But I really wanted to use that wavy background, and I had that little piece sitting there on the side that I had cut off when I made it 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I thought it was perfect. So I placed it there just to see how it would look, and I was really happy with it. So I still was able to use my cool wavy background. Now here I went ahead and did it off camera, but I'm going to show you what I did. I just took 2 pieces of twine and I just tied knots, and I tried to space them out. I think it was about an inch and a half or an inch and a quarter in between each knot. But see, this one was too short, so I ended up doing it off camera, and I made it twice as long so that I can loop it on the inside of the card. but instead of cutting both ends, I left a loop on one of the ends so that I could kind of thread it through, and then I'm going to end up taping the ends to the front so it'll go behind my background. So there I'm just looping it through that loop there. And I still wasn't sure if this was going to turn out because I didn't want my soft navy cardstock to look lumpy up in the corner. And I kept trying to adjust it because I wanted those knots. I didn't want one to be right on the corner like it is. So I keep kind of messing with it until they're spread out a little bit more evenly. And then I'm just taking some Tombow Extreme adhesive to glue my ends in place. And I was trying to keep it as high as possible, just so even when you looked at it from the side, I didn't want there to be a gap in between the knots at the top and then my piece that's going behind my cardstock. I was trying to hide it as best as I could. And with the Simon Says Stamp cardstock, it's nice thick cardstock, so you really can't even tell that it's behind there. I was really happy with how it turned out. So I'm just going to use some liquid glue so I have a little bit of wiggle room on trying to put this in place, because I made those knots pretty tight up there at the top, and I have to get this cardstock underneath my knots. And I was sweating it here for a second because I didn't want it to dry on the cardstock before I could get it in place. So I'm quickly trying to kind of wiggle it up underneath those knots without making them too loose. And then it's starting to dry on the card base here, so just had to work quick. And I had one little piece that was trying to fold over, but I just took my tweezers and popped it out. So it couldn't have gone more perfect. I was very happy with it. Could have gone in a totally different direction. So I thought I was going to glue this down here next, but I'm going to go in a little bit different direction for a minute. I wanted to add some splatters to my front panel here. And I'm just taking some more of that weathered wood and adding a little bit of water to it. And then I'm going to use this Distress splatter brush. This is another first time for me. I just got this brush and I really like it. So you pull back on the brushes and then you slowly let go, and you can kind of control where your splatters go a little bit better than, at least for me, better than I can with a paintbrush. So I'm just going to keep adding some of the Distress splatter, and then I'm also going to add some gold splatter too. Yeah, it didn't get all over my workspace like paintbrush does, which you're going to see in a second here. I'm going to take, this is a gold watercolor, but I loved my water dish up there. It was so sparkly and marbly looking, so I had to play in it for a second. So I'm just buttering it up here, getting it ready. And then my paintbrush is loaded with that beautiful gold color. So I start to splatter it with the paintbrush, and as you can see, it's going all over the place. So then I tried to do it with a splatter brush, and I don't know if the paint was too thick or I just didn't get enough paint on the brush or what, but it didn't really splatter that well for me. I think it was that I just didn't have enough paint on the brush. So if I were to do this again, I'd probably make sure I add more water to my little paint tin or my little paint dish there so that I could get more color on that brush. But I knew my paintbrush was full of that beautiful gold paint, so I just picked that up and used that to splatter it. And of course it's going everywhere. I even had it up on my iPad screen. That's why I got this brush, because I wanted to control it a little bit more. I hate having paint splatters all over my craft desk. But look how pretty it looks. I was very happy with how it turned out. Now I'm going to go back to this foiled piece here. And I'm just going to stick with the Tombow Mono liquid adhesive. Again, just so I have a little bit of wiggle room when I put it in place. I'm really excited to use these foils again. I keep purchasing foils because I love how they look, but then they just sit in a container. I don't ever use them, so I was really happy to get this transfer gel. Opens up a whole nother world of possibilities. But I thought it was a nice bit of, not sparkle, but, you know, a little pizzazz for a masculine card. It wasn't sparkly with glitter or anything like that. So I like that it gave it that little extra wow factor to a masculine card. And the paint wasn't dry yet, so I had to be creative about adding my craft foam on the back here. So I'm going to cut it down to size, but I don't want to put that watercolor panel upside down on my glass mat because I didn't want to smear the gold splatter. So I'm just trying to kind of line it up. And then I took my crocodile corner puncher on those two rounded corners. And now I'm just adding a 1/4 inch score tape on both sides. And normally I would just put my front panel face down on my mat and add the foam that way, but again, I didn't want to smear that splatter. And I thought about taking it right here and just placing it on the craft foam, but I don't trust myself. I don't do shaker cards like that because I'm afraid I'm not going to line it up right, or it's going to be cockeyed and then it's going to drive me nuts. So it's not touching the glass mat. I just had it resting on my finger. And I lined it up that way, and then I'm just trying to gently press it into place, make sure it was adhered to the craft foam. And then I'm just going to attach that to my card base. Now you'll see in the pictures I added a couple additional elements to it because I just felt like it was missing something. So I took the rounded alphabet die from Simon Says Stamp and I cut out the word dad and then put it vertically down the right hand side. And I also took some clear drops. I'll have everything listed in the description below what I use, but I just put some clear drops on it too because since it's a nautical themed card, I thought it would be cool to look like water droplets. So that is my final card. Thank you guys so much for watching my video. I really appreciate it. I feel like a broken record every week saying the same thing. So if you like my video, you know what to do. If you want to see more, subscribe. All of the supplies I used are listed and linked in the description below, and they'll also be over on my blog with more information and additional pictures and stuff like that. All right, thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you next week with a new Simon Says Stamp Wednesday Challenge project. Bye!